Welcome to the second episode of The Cloud Today. I'm your host, Martin McNichol, and I'm here today with my co-host, Guru's Marketing Director, John Serino.
Hey.
And as well as our featured guests. So today we have Alyssa Lamberti, our Guru's Marketing Content Specialist.
Hey, everyone.
And Michael Turcotte, Certified NetSuite Cloud Developer.
Hi, everyone.
So in this episode of The Cloud Today, we'll be talking about how different generations use technology. So today we're going to talk about technology and how different generations use technology. And I thought this was very interesting as my daughter is just starting high school, and we bought her a new phone, and it was really interesting to see her interact in her phone and how she's embracing technology and using it in ways that I would have never thought of. And I was reflecting on how I use technology as a CEO in 21st century and how the technology helps me to do certain things. And I see that it's not the same around. So hence, how do different technologies are impacting different age groups? So let's start with Alyssa. Alyssa, how do you use technology? What's your relationship with technology?
Well, it's really funny because even as a millennial, Mike would kind of know too, we kind of grew up in the age of technology. I mean, when I grew up, the computer was just kind of starting, but it was always part of my life. So I grew up with technology always being a constant. So I always expected the technology to kind of grow with me as I grew, because that's what happened. When I grew up, we had dial-up internet, and then now we're at a point where we have AI.
You've seen dial-up internet?
I've seen dial-up internet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I remember.
You either got great memory or you went to a museum.
No, we actually used to have it at home. I remember that I would wait 40 minutes at least to have the Internet Explorer actually come up. So yeah, no, I remember that, and it's really funny because like I was saying, it evolved as I grew up. So with me, I think of technology as not only being something that's a plus to my life, but it has to be, I guess, it's convenient. It's something that grows with me. It's something that I use in my everyday, and I kind of expect it to be proactive, and I expect it to kind of grow as I grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Alyssa, just to give context to our auditors, how old are you?
I'm 24, and I guess some context about even career-wise, I've been in marketing for about 2 years, so kind of, I'm at this point where I'm still kind of new to it, but I also kind of grew up with a lot of these concepts, so.
Yeah, I remember dial-up, just to go back there real quick, because I remember at the time thinking, my God, I no longer have to go to a music store to buy records. I could download a song in just under an hour, right? So it's 3-4 megs. It would take an hour to download, and while we didn't realize it at the time, it was really the very first point in history, I think, where digital was starting to give you conveniences that you used to get from brick and mortar.
And all the different events that happened after that around the revolution that went around the music industry, and you being a musician is very close to that. And so, Michael, what's your relationship with technology?
So I think I've used technology pretty much all my life. I am very highly dependent on it now, as my career as a software developer is just starting. So anything computer related, I definitely have to be keeping up with it as much as I can. When it comes to technology, I think that as a young professional, there's only so many kind of different applications that are out there that you have to really, how can I say this? There's so many different applications that are out there right now that is just kind of vying for our attention, that it's extremely important that we're able to filter out the ones that are going to be beneficial to us.
How do you do that? How do you select what's useful for you?
So I'm using so as much as I could use that one. How would I be able to select which ones are useful to me?
Or what do you do? How do you do it?
I don't think I really have any process really behind that to select any. I mean, there's a lot of how you see they're being represented. You know, there's a lot of even just the image or the branding, for example, of some software or application that I could get behind. I find that I'm very, very attached to like the values that companies or any type of, you know, application would promote. So that for me is something that speaks to me the most.
That's interesting. You see, because for me, as you know, I'm over 50 now. The culture of the company is secondary to the product, but that's not the way you see it. You go first in the values of the company, then you say, all right, I might use your product. That's interesting.
I mean, I'm going to jump in here because as someone who, I guess, for, you know, kind of in the same age group as Mike, I think of it as convenience. So I think that's how I think of my technology. As John was saying before, how when dial-up internet started coming along, especially for the music industry, it was like, oh, finally I can have a way to stream music and I don't have to go buy a record. Convenience. When I'm thinking of technology, Netflix is the biggest example of that. I mean, before we used to go to movie theaters. I know they still exist. I'm not that young, but you know, we used to go to movie theaters, and what was it about? Okay, it's convenient because you can see it on the big screen, but it was also more of a socializing kind of aspect. Whereas now Netflix, why do we watch Netflix? Well, it's convenient. We have it on our computers. We can watch it any time of the day, and you can watch for as long as you want. And that's, for me, is convenient. Things like Uber, same thing. What is it? It's more convenient than a taxi because you can track where your car is coming from. You see how long it's going to take. You can call them from anywhere. When it comes down to it, morality is still up there. I think in this time, in this kind of period that we're in, it's something that you can't detach. If you know someone is treating their employees poorly, sometimes we are kind of ignorant. There's so many things that are going on that it's hard to keep up.
Ultimately, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, and culture is incredibly important. But kind of like Martin, you know, like for me, it's, and maybe because I am older, and by the way, I was at the movies. I was at the theaters last weekend, so. But yeah, kind of like Martin, for me, it's kind of like it has to solve a need. It has to, like any technology, has to address an issue that makes it, you know, like you use the word convenience for me as well. It solves a need, makes something easier. But you know, if I'm not necessarily looking at the company culture.
That's interesting. You see right there, like there's a small difference. In terms of how we use technology and the new technology, I'm a geek. I say it out loud. I like new stuff. I'll download some applications. But if I look at other generations and how they do it, they don't. What I found is that I don't see that they're looking to solve a problem necessarily. It's just the fact of trying new things. Do you see yourself, Michael, in that situation of just trying new things, or you're looking for a problem to solve? Then if I just take the usage of mobile technology, will you go out there and download applications and try them out?
Like we were talking about convenience just before, or ones that are, you know, that are kind of just vying for my time for the sake of having you know, visibility, or just being on my phone, or sending me push notifications or things like this, or getting me into the loop of, you know, constantly using them. So that's the way kind of that I interact with newer technology. The new is it's definitely, you know, it's exciting and it's pushing boundaries and things like this, but there's a lot of new things coming out, and we need to kind of find where new is not just new, but new is also performant, and it is, like we said, convenient, and you know.
How long would you give a new app when you try it, or a new technology? Because, you know, as a developer, you have tools that you're using. You go on the internet and you look at different tools to help you out. How long would you give one of those technologies?
So I mean, for me, like, just real quick, if I'm downloading an app, I'll try it once. I'll give it a minute. Yeah. Honestly, like if it does what it said in the description, which would be the reason why I downloaded it to begin with, then great, I'm probably going to hold on to it until it no longer serves its purpose or something better comes around. Otherwise, you know, I'll open it up, and if I see that it really isn't representative of the way it was described on the App Store and it's not doing its job, I'm deleting it right away.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, technology comes as, it's a trend. there's different trends in technology. AI is one of them. And as much as, maybe we used to think that trends were only for fashion and, marketing. I mean, as a marketer, I've kind of gotten used to having to leverage trends and kind of develop campaigns and strategies around trends. But technology is kind of the same thing. There are different technological trends, and you kind of have to see what works best for you. And there's so many of them that, as Mike was saying, not all of them might be useful to you. But because they come so quickly, you don't really have, you're not going to spend that much time seeing if something is useful. You're kind of going to go,
But you know what's really interesting about technological trends is, unlike fashion trends or unlike cultural trends, technological trends tend to stay.
Yeah.
So they get updated. There are improvements. They're optimized. They're constantly looking
they're
at
proactive,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing here is that there is a speed of velocity in trying application and trying new things. And if we look at the world of ERP or cloud ERP, which is what we do at Gurus, I actually see a difference between different generation and how they buy cloud ERP, which is something that people would take sometimes years to select in the past. Now they do it in weeks or months. And all this newer generation, we see that they are using the web, using our content, because John, you can see it, and our content is being downloaded in terms of white papers and videos. Yeah. People research themselves and they try before they buy. And these users, what we see is when they come up to us, they already made their decision. I mean, they understand what they're doing compared to older generation that they send us an RFP and they want us to do a demo. I mean, very different usage of what's out there before making a decision. Do you watch videos?
Absolutely.
Of solutions
Of
before you
Of
look
course.
at them?
I mean, if anything, when you go to a website, that's one of the first things you're looking for. You're like, what does this look like? What can it do? And as John, this kind of comes back to what John was saying. Is like when he is testing an app, for example, test it, you look at it, you want to know what it does right away. Same thing with kind of a software. You want to know exactly what it does.
But that's it. What you're saying is interesting, is that even trying the application, are we seeing a trend where people will watch a YouTube video on the app from somebody that's not the editor of the software to make, to have an opinion before they even spend the time or put the effort in installing it? That's interesting here.
Absolutely. That's probably the way that I'm going to go ahead and get into trying out new things, is definitely getting opinions or any type of information from YouTube or other social media.
I also think factors like investment are considered here, right? And effort as well. So, for example, if I'm downloading an app is very low effort and likely zero investment at the beginning. So it's probably just faster to download it, try it, and delete it if it doesn't work. But if you're, to your point, Martin, anyone shopping for even our products, what we do here at Gurus, right? It's a technology that you're going to be using for a while. So you certainly want to do all the research and the due diligence. And going back to trends, on the topic of what we do, I remember, when cloud technology was a novelty at the beginning. And then we had very few users. We had early adopters, but it was really difficult for companies to make that investment at the beginning, especially because you don't know what the long-term results are.
And definitely, and that's a trend for sure now.
Yeah, no, well, I think we're at the point where it's even past the trend phase. I think we saw it evolve, and especially with your experience, you were one of the first users and adopters of cloud technology. And I think we saw it go from it being a novelty to, hey guys, this really works. And then it was trending and everyone wanted it, to now it's, if you're not in the cloud, you're not running a business.
It went from early adopter only. It was not even called the cloud. I think I've said that a couple of times when we started. It was called software as a service, or there was other terms that were used, or application service provider was another term. But it went to become a cloud, and now it's a requirement. It's got to be born in the cloud for these companies to want to use the technology, because they do not want to have to manage the infrastructure. And Michael, I guess you as a developer, do you own you have like a servers at home, and do you have your computer where you install specific software, or you only rely on the cloud? What do you do as a developer?
Mostly, I'm going to say that a lot of my development time or anything that I'm going to be doing, producing documents or things like this, they basically all live on the cloud. I'm yeah, straight up going to say it. It's a lot of my stuff that I do is all on the cloud. So if I go from anything that I'm doing in the development world, what am I going to be using on there? Hold on. I do a lot of development. So at my university, all of the services that we have there are on the cloud. We're using Google Cloud there to store all of our information. We are also using GitHub. Actually, I'm not sure GitHub does do storage on the cloud there, so that I'm not sure.
Maybe
But
they host it.
yeah, it might be hosted on the cloud.
But for
I'm
you,
not
it's a
for sure.
service. I mean,
Yeah,
you didn't do
exactly.
it yourself. You
A
didn't have
service.
to install a server at your home to manage, your version control tools.
No, not at all. And I would prefer it to be this way for my own safe. Again, we could get into the debate of like security and who has visibility on anything that's going into the cloud. But for the most part, when it comes down to convenience of being able to access pretty much all of my files wherever I need to be, whether I'm at home, on the bus, at school, or anything like this, I just know that the availability of all my of my files and whatever I need to access are going to be at my disposal immediately.
And we talk about trend. But what is a trend, and how does something become a trend? Because we've seen the cloud become a trend. It was, a term was coined, the cloud. Then people started to use it and started to use the technology, and now it's quite present in the business world. But how does an app become a trend? How does something new become a trend? And I'm going to start with something that we see. I saw my daughter, she's 12, and now what's trending is something called TikTok, right? How does something like TikTok become a trend?
It's like everything
Yeah.
just goes faster, because it's really funny that how we say like cloud used to be a trend, but it's funny because there's a generation that was adapting to trends, or this particular trend, the cloud, and then there's a generation like my generation that kind of grew up with that, and there's a generation like Martin, like your daughter's generation, that grew up with TikTok. TikTok isn't even a trend anymore for her, or is it just kind of like how things are?
I think that's how things are right now, and that's something her friends are using. And this little app that records videos for like 30 seconds, they put music on it and they publish it to their friends. So it's, as a parent, freaks me out because they watch other videos too, and you don't know how they manage what my kids can see. So we manage that closely. But for her, that's something that came to her life super fast. It came like over a weekend. All of a sudden, all she does is TikTok videos
And how,
or
right?
her art, and she puts things on TikTok because she likes it, and she does a lot of crafts and art. But now it's a trend in our group, and we see there's thousands of users. So wow, how does something become a trend?
I think it's just like it's something that we've never seen before, or something that's slightly different, I guess, from something we've never seen before. People get excited about technology. They get excited about something they've never seen, about new capabilities, about just trying new things. And as you said, and as you mentioned before, sometimes we try stuff just because we want to try it because it's new. So, something comes up, everyone gets excited about, everybody tries it, and then eventually something else comes up. I mean, I know the Snapchat and Instagram is kind of the similar thing, where Snapchat came along and was like, oh, great, you can send videos to people, only a few second videos, and everyone got excited about it. And then Instagram came along and was like, yeah, I can do that too.
I think that the point you made about getting excited about technology, and because the theme of this episode is the generational gap, I think that is a generational thing.
Yeah.
Certainly, like your generation does get excited about technology. I think the truth can be said for me and Martin as well. But if we look at the generations that are slightly older than us, if we go into the baby boomer generation, who I reported into at the start of my career, right? And I would say that for them, it's a struggle to keep up with technology. Something as simple as, I see my in-laws, for example, who are in their 70s, who would struggle to keep up with their cable provider updating the menu. But then again, you do look at some baby boomers and they are using technology. So I would say it's more, in their case, it's more of a need. If for
Yes.
those who are happy to retire and move on, they're probably enjoying things like, fishing somewhere, which I certainly am not. I would love to do when I retire. But if you're still working, if you're still in the industry, you're using technology, and
Yeah.
it's probably by having to adapt and not from excitement. So
Yeah.
look at baby boomers like Bill Gates and love him or hate him, Donald Trump. He certainly knows how to use technology, especially Twitter, as
Yeah.
we see, to get a reaction, right? So he's using it. And to me, like the baby boomers who are, using technology, who are adapting, are kind of like those companies who are getting out of their legacy systems and moving into cloud ERP, moving into NetSuite. Because if you're not, you're not working.
So I think there's a parallel here with what you're saying between the generation gap of individual, but also the generation gap between companies. As you have companies that were born in the 20th century, most of them were born in the 20th century, and you look at the new generation of companies, well, like Gurus, who were born in the 21st century, and how we use technology. So I can see that in my business, we adopt technology at a fast pace. Every year, we'll introduce a new set of technology that sometimes helps us for a very point problem that we have, or to improve something. If I just look at the video conference technology, I think we've tried 4 products since we started this company. And every time it's for a better tool that does a better job, and the company adapts very fast to new technologies. So we can see that as in our customers, where we, to your point, when we come to a customer that was born in the 20th century and the company's been there for 25 years, for them it's harder as an organization. So we could talk about the generation gap of an organization and how the organization itself can adapt and use new technology. And when we go to those companies to propose a cloud solution like NetSuite, we can see some resistance to change, as we don't see the same reaction when we go to younger organizations where they come to us and they say, I need NetSuite as an example, or Delboomi for my EDI. I need that because right now I need to do task ABC and I don't want to invest in this on-premise technology anymore. Let's do it now. So that's an interesting parallel there.
Yeah, of course. So when you have companies that are kind of older, it's the idea that they have to adapt, they have to adopt new technologies, whereas newer companies, they're just kind of born. They're just kind of born into it. We have a lot of clients that we get who are still using spreadsheets, and they're comfortable in that process, even if it's not working. There's the idea of like, well, what if I don't understand how to use it? What if
I think you're right though, but it's I think you nailed it with the word comfort.
Comfort,
right?
yeah.
It's comfort. It's not necessarily optimal. It's
No.
just
Oh,
we're going to stick
not at
to
all.
it because learning the technology seems intimidating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of companies, especially when they come to us, they get to the point where they have no choice but to upgrade because their companies are failing, their
Yeah.
processes are a mess, and they kind of are forced to adapt. to
Yeah,
technology.
and I think the technology as well has done a great job at adapting to them. Like we
Yeah.
look at our kids and, like to your point, Martin, your daughter who's using technology. I have kids similar in age to yours, so I see them as well. And when we look at them, when we observe them using technology, we think, oh my God, it's like they just know how to use it. But when actually what we know is that companies have adapted their UX over time through R&D and behavioral studies to be intuitive to people. So younger generations, they're more intuitive because yes, they were born into it, but we're also addressing the needs of the older generation. And that intimidating feeling that they have, I see it often go away. The first time I gave my mom an iPad, she's a 72-year-old woman at the time, she was intimidated by it and didn't want to use it until she began to use it and realized, well, this is easy. And I think, Martin, we see the same thing with NetSuite, right? It's over the years, I remember when I first looked at NetSuite compared to what it is today, it's just like this really attractive, this simple user interface and it's adapted to them. It's made it easier. It's intuitive as well. It's not the same, not at all the same technology it was years ago.
It's not, and they've upgraded the platform many times and improved the user interface, as we see with many other cloud applications, where you don't have to upgrade your whole user base in something that would be very time consuming, and with applications that had in the client server era as an example, or where you had even some piece of software installed on a desktop, you had to retest the whole platform and the whole desktop application so they don't conflict with each other. It was really painful, and it was a lot of time that we spent on that. Now with the cloud, they just deploy a new graphical user interface and people are using it, and the feedback is really, really rapid to go back to the company and to improve again on that new graphical user interface. So we see our customers, of course, using the platform and getting a lot of value out of it because it's easier to use. And to your point, I think there's an interesting parallel between B2C or consumer applications and how they're using the applications in a way that, quite frankly, 10 years ago or 5 years ago would have been like a full desktop application to create video. Now it's just a couple simple buttons and here you go. They call it TikTok, and most likely, as you've mentioned, Alyssa, Instagram might come up with the same functionality next month because it's kind of working for these other guys.
Yes, and it's funny, I guess, when a lot of, the older generation, they're probably even asking, like, how do I keep up? But kind of as we've seen, technology has been making it easy. As long as you're kind of willing to try new things, and as long as you're willing to, adapt the way that you kind of use technology, newer technology makes it easy for you to kind of to learn and to adapt it, for whether it's, a 72-year-old who's learning how to, use an iPad, or whether it's an organization that's been around for 50, 60, 70 years and is trying to stop using spreadsheets and start using, an ERP.
Some of them spreadsheets is an improvement, actually, when they run these huge mainframes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think resistance to change is going to be something that is a difficulty that's going to be encountered by any software developer, any type of company that's going to be creating new user experiences. And the same, how we say about certain generations, how they're going to have to adapt to technologies. Well, smarter companies are definitely going to adapt their technologies to be used with any types of users, or to really go and target the specific user base that we need that are going to be mainly using this technology.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the expectations that a lot of, I guess, younger generation have, is that we kind of expect our technology to proactively kind of grow with us and to adapt to us. Whereas kind of, I think back then it was, here's what this technology does. You have a scanner, what do? You put paper and you scan it, and just kind of does the same thing all the time. Whereas now with technology, kind of like even AI, we kind of...
your phone does everything.
Your phone does everything, and that's kind of how we expect it to. So it's like the double of like, technology is adapting to us, but we're also adapting to it. It's like this, parallel kind of relationship.
Yeah, sometimes I feel guilty about how much time I spend with my phone, and then I realize, oh, wait a minute, I'm using it as a calendar, I'm using it as a camera, I'm using it as a guitar tuner, I'm using it to do my banking. Oh yeah, and I use it to answer my calls. So, to a certain degree,
it's not a phone.
It's not a phone.
No.
Yeah.
How do you see yourself being different from older generation? And I'm addressing myself to Michael and Alyssa in your use of technology. Do you see something different in how you use technology than your parents, as an example?
I think that just the sheer amount of new technologies that's being that we grew up with, it's a little bit easier, at least for our generation, to kind of think of a clever way, for example, to use the technology, whereas maybe for the older generations, it's more, okay, tell me what this technology should do, and I will use it accordingly.
So train me. So older generation would say, train me on how to use this tool, as you see it as, hey, that's just another tool, and intuitively you go for it.
Yeah.
And I think that the main difference there is if you look at the older generation, they would use technology to repeat the same task over and over. So kind of like what Alyssa was saying about this is a fax machine. Now I need to send 40 faxes today, and they would stand next to the fax machine and do it over and over. And that was the way they used technology. And I think the millennials would rather spend 3 days figuring out how to develop an app that will send 40 faxes in 1 minute and never have to stand next to the fax machine again. So that I know you guys get a lot of flack from the older generations, but that quote unquote laziness actually paid off and helped develop technology and take it to the next level.
Efficiency.
Yeah.
I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, like you said, John, we get a lot of kind of flack from older generations, even being like, you're dependent on technology. But it's like, well, we're not necessarily dependent on it. We're also not necessarily not dependent on it. But it's kind of because it is in our lives and because we're expecting it to kind of grow and develop with us, it allows us to develop it. I mean, if you didn't have a generation who wanted technology to be proactive, then you would never get these developments in technology because no one would be looking for them to do more. We wouldn't get AI and the cloud if you didn't have people who wanted more out of their tools.
So what I'm hearing is that you don't see a trend. What you see is that you live in a world of technology that's constantly evolving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I think that trend started, to be fair, I think that trend started with Generation X, right? Because if we didn't have that mentality as well back in the day, we wouldn't have emails. We'd still be standing next to the fax machine. So it's something that I think started with us, and we began to see things like the search engine. We began to see things like social media. And then with your generation, the millennials, it's taken to a next level. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to, you know, the point we were saying before, whereas the difference between trends in technology and trends in, you know, fashion or music is that trends in technology tend to stick around and they just end up developing. So what you think of as a trend is just actually a version 2 of some technology that we've come up with. You know, so Instagram is just another version of, you know, Facebook that was another version of MySpace, that was another version of whatever came before that.
So that's a really interesting observation, right? So if with the concept of, you know, technology isn't a trend, we know that anymore. It's here to stay. It's just going to evolve.
Yeah.
What do you think? You know, it's really interesting because we have different generations here in this room. I'd love to go around the room and hear about what everyone thinks is the future of technology. Where is it going to evolve? And not just, you know, not just on a social level or for entertainment and all the fun things that we use, but for business as well.
So what do we see as a trend today, or what we call a trend, which is the cloud, and we see all those applications evolving, as Alyssa and Michael mentioned, and just growing in terms of functionality and ease of use. What I see coming in the future is algorithms, so people call it AI, I call it algorithms, that will start to embed themselves more and more with the information that we have and provide more insights into that data, whether we like it or not, whether we're comfortable or not with the results that come up as it digs into your credit information or into your customer data. It'll come up with information, and I see this as the next step in the evolution of the enterprise applications that people call the cloud. And just in Montreal, for the people that know a company called Element AI, so that's a local company here where they just went to a Series B's of $200 million, which is nothing for people in California, but for us here in Canada, that's a lot of money. And they did a 135 million Series A. And they're just developing those algorithms and working with different tools to bring to the market those new technologies that will help in the future. And that's really building the future, building something that might become what we call a trend, or, as you've mentioned, an evolution of existing platforms.
Yeah, and to build on Martin's point there, with any type of AI kind or algorithmic, like inference engine, if you want to call it that, you're going to need a lot of data So I definitely think data collection is also going to be something big in the future. So we're, any type
For
of
good or worse.
for better or worse, that is absolutely true. So and again, the type of data that's going to be collected, and I think that's going to be something that is very, very, very valuable to companies, is how they can access large amounts of data to be able to make the best types of decisions for them.
Good. Well, I'd like to thank you all for spending this time with us today, and have a great day, everyone, and look for the next episode of The Cloud Today.
Guru Solutions is North America's largest Oracle NetSuite ERP services provider. Visit their website at gurusolutions.com.